The wedding photos were still warm from the printer when I saw them scattered across my hospital bed. My trembling hands picked up image after image of my husband Emeka in a pristine white agbada, smiling beside a radiant bride in traditional Igbo attire. The bride wasn't me. What would you do if you walked in on this? Hit like if you've been betrayed, and comment below where you're watching from. Surprised, Adunni? My sister-in-law Ngozi stood in the doorway of my private room at Lagos University Teaching Hospital, her lips curled in a satisfied smirk. While you were lying here playing sick for 3 months, your husband moved on with his life. The heart monitor beside my bed began beeping frantically as my blood pressure spiked. I had been recovering from a severe car accident that left me with multiple fractures and internal injuries. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive, but looking at these photos, I wondered if death might have been kinder. Where is Emeka? I managed to whisper, my throat dry as the Sahara. On his honeymoon in Dubai with Chioma, of course. She's already 3 months pregnant with his child. Ngozi's words hit me like a Lagos Danfo bus at full speed. He said to tell you that the divorce papers are with his lawyer. You'll be hearing from them soon. I stared at the photos again. Emeka looked happier than I had ever seen him in our 7 years of marriage. The bride, Chioma, was young and glowing, probably in her mid-20s. Her traditional coral beads and gold jewelry sparkled under the camera flash at what looked like an elaborate ceremony in Victoria Island. He couldn't even wait until I was out of the hospital? The question escaped my lips before I could stop it. Why should he? You've been nothing but a burden, Adunni. No children after 7 years, always busy with your little tech company instead of taking care of your husband like a proper wife should. Ngozi picked up her expensive Hermes bag, a gift I was sure came from Emeka's generosity. At least Chioma knows her place as a woman. The irony wasn't lost on me. My little tech company was DataStream Solutions, one of Nigeria's fastest-growing fintech startups. What Emeka didn't know, what nobody knew except my late father's lawyer, was that I had inherited a massive trust fund worth over $800 million from my grandfather's oil investments. The trust had specific conditions. I could only access it after my 30th birthday or in case of severe financial distress caused by domestic betrayal. I was 29 years old. I would turn 30 in exactly 2 weeks. As Ngozi's heels clicked away down the hospital corridor, I reached for my phone with shaking hands. My personal assistant Kemi answered on the first ring. Madam Adunni, how are you feeling today? Kemi, I need you to contact Barrister Johnson immediately. Tell him it's time to discuss my grandfather's trust fund. The trust fund? But madam, I thought. Things have changed, Kemi. Things have changed dramatically. Through my hospital room window, I could see the bustling streets of Lagos. The city where I had built my company from nothing, where I had supported Emeka's political ambitions with my connections and resources, where I had foolishly believed in the sanctity of marriage. The wedding photos lay scattered on my white hospital sheets like evidence of the most devastating crime. But as I stared at my husband's joyful face next to his new wife, I felt something cold and calculating settle in my chest where my heart used to be. Emeka had made the biggest mistake of his life. He had no idea that the wife he abandoned in a hospital bed was about to become one of the wealthiest women in West Africa. And I was going to make sure he learned that lesson in the most painful way possible. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Sorry about your situation. Your husband has been bragging all over Victoria Island about his new marriage. Thought you should know. A concerned friend. The message included a video file. With trembling fingers, I pressed play and watched Emeka at what appeared to be a private celebration, raising a glass of champagne and declaring to a room full of Lagos elite, to freedom from dead weight. My new wife Chioma is everything a man could want. Fertile, obedient, and knows her place. The room erupted in laughter and applause. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. 2 days later, Barrister Johnson sat beside my hospital bed with a thick manila folder that would change everything. His weathered face, marked by 40 years of legal practice in Lagos, carried an expression I had never seen before, something between excitement and concern. "Adunni, your grandfather was a very wise man," he began, adjusting his glasses. "When he set up this trust 25 years ago, he included provisions that I thought we might never need to invoke." I shifted uncomfortably in my hospital bed, still feeling the ache in my ribs from the accident. What kind of provisions? The betrayal clause. He opened the folder and pulled out documents bearing official government seals. If you can prove domestic betrayal by your spouse, particularly infidelity or abandonment during illness, you gain immediate access to the full trust fund, regardless of your age. My breath caught in my throat. The full amount. $827 million, as of this morning's valuation. Plus the controlling shares in 3 oil companies, 2 banks, and a telecommunications firm. Barrister Johnson's voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly as he handed me the documents. "Your grandfather suspected that one day, someone might try to take advantage of your kind heart." The weight of the papers in my hands felt heavier than gold. All these years, I had struggled to build data stream solutions from the ground up, taking small loans and working 18-hour days. Emeka had often complained about my long hours, saying I was neglecting my duties as a wife. If only he had known what awaited me. What do I need to prove the betrayal? Barrister Johnson smiled grimly and pulled out a tablet. I took the liberty of having our private investigator document everything. Video footage of the wedding ceremony, witness statements, financial records showing Emeka's expenditures on his new wife, and... He paused dramatically. Bank records showing he's been siphoning money from your joint accounts to fund his new lifestyle. The tablet screen showed damning evidence. Emeka withdrawing large sums from our shared business account, receipts for expensive jewelry purchases made just days before my accident, even WhatsApp messages to Chioma planning their wedding while I lay unconscious in intensive care. He stole from me while I was fighting for my life. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain I had endured. I'm afraid so. But this gives us everything we need to activate the trust and pursue criminal charges if you choose. A knock at the door interrupted us. My personal assistant Kemi entered, her usually composed demeanor replaced by barely contained fury. "Madam, I have news. That man and his new wife are planning a Thanksgiving party this weekend at the Oriental Hotel. The whole of Lagos society will be there. He's been telling people you signed divorce papers and that you're, how did he put it? Finally out of his hair." The audacity was breathtaking. While I lay in a hospital bed with pins in my leg and bandages covering surgical scars, my husband was celebrating his freedom and spinning lies about our marriage. "Kemi, I want you to do something for me," I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. "Contact the Oriental Hotel. Tell them I want to book the presidential suite for this weekend." "But madam, the doctor said you shouldn't." "The doctor can worry about my bones healing. I need to worry about my reputation." I turned to Barrister Johnson. "How quickly can the trust fund be activated?" "If you sign these papers today, the funds will be available by Friday morning." "But Adunni, are you sure you want to move this fast?" I thought about Emeka's laughter in that video, his casual dismissal of our 7-year marriage, his cruelty in abandoning me when I needed him most. Then I thought about Chioma, young and naive, probably having no idea she had married a man who could abandon his wife in a hospital bed. Friday morning is perfect. I want to attend Emeka's Thanksgiving party. Kemi's eyes widened. "Madam, what are you planning?" "Justice. Kemi. I'm planning justice." As I signed the legal documents that would make me one of the wealthiest individuals in Nigeria, my phone buzzed with another message from the unknown number. Your husband just bought Chioma a new Range Rover with your joint account funds. The receipt is attached. He's also telling people you were never good with money and that's why your marriage failed. The attached photo showed a gleaming white Range Rover Sport with a giant red bow, and Chioma's delighted face as she posed beside her new gift. Barrister Johnson noticed my expression. What is it? My husband just made another mistake. He's about to learn that hell hath no fury like a woman with $800 million and absolutely nothing left to lose. Friday morning arrived like a gift from the gods. I sat in the back of my newly purchased Rolls-Royce Phantom, my first purchase as an official multimillionaire, watching Lagos traffic crawl along the third mainland bridge. My driver, Ibrahim, kept glancing at me through the rearview mirror with barely concealed amazement. Madam, are you sure you want to go to this party? You just left the hospital yesterday. I adjusted the diamond necklace that had cost more than most people's annual salary. Another little purchase I had made that morning. Ibrahim, sometimes the best medicine is revenge served ice cold. My phone rang. It was Emeka. Adani. I heard you were released from the hospital. Look, about the divorce papers. Hello, husband, I said sweetly, emphasizing the last word. How was Dubai? There was a pause. He hadn't expected me to know about the honeymoon. Listen, we need to talk. But not today, I have this Thanksgiving party. At the Oriental Hotel? Yes, I know. I'll see you there. What? Adani, you can't be serious. You're in no condition to. I hung up and smiled. Through the car window, I could see the glittering waters of Lagos Lagoon, and beyond that, the sprawling metropolis where I had been reborn as someone entirely new. Kemi, sitting beside me with a tablet full of information, looked up from her screen. Madam, the private investigator just sent more intel. Emeka has been telling guests that you're mentally unstable from the accident and might cause a scene. He's already arranged security to have you removed if you show up. How thoughtful of him. I opened my purse and pulled out a document that had arrived by courier that morning. Kemi, what does this say? She read the legal header and gasped. It's a court order giving you temporary injunction powers over Emeka's assets due to suspected fraud and theft. How did you get this so quickly? When you have $800 million and the best lawyers in Lagos, amazing things happen overnight. I had spent the morning in a whirlwind of legal activity. Barrister Johnson and his team had worked through the night to freeze Emeka's accounts, file criminal charges for theft, and obtain court orders that would make this evening very interesting indeed. The Rolls-Royce pulled up to the Oriental Hotel's grand entrance. The red carpet was already rolled out, and I could see Lagos elite beginning to arrive for what they thought would be Emeka's celebration. Photographers from This Day Style and other society magazines were positioned strategically around the entrance. Madam, the federal agents are in position as we discussed, Kemi informed me, checking her phone. They're waiting for your signal. As I stepped out of the car, I could hear gasps from the small crowd that had gathered. I looked nothing like the broken woman who had been carried out of a mangled car 3 months ago. My custom-made traditional wrapper was crafted from the finest Aquite cloth, my gold jewelry was museum quality, and my bearing carried the confidence that only comes with unlimited resources. Adani. My God, is that you? It was my former friend Folake, who had clearly already heard about Emeka's new marriage. Her expression was a mixture of pity and confusion. Hello, Folake. Lovely evening for a party, isn't it? But, I thought, Emeka said you were. She gestured vaguely, unable to finish the sentence. That I was what? Mentally unstable? Financially ruined? Unable to care for myself? I smiled and handed her my business card, not the old one from DataStream Solutions, but a new one with a very different title. I'm actually doing quite well. Folake's eyes widened as she read, Adunni Okafor, Chairman and CEO, Okafor Holdings Limited. Net worth, $827 million. This can't be real, she whispered. Oh, it's very real. Now, shall we go inside? I believe my husband is expecting me. As we walked through the hotel's marble lobby, I could see the Thanksgiving party in full swing in the ballroom. Through the glass doors, I spotted Emeka in another expensive agbada, his arm around Chioma, who was indeed visibly pregnant. They were surrounded by Lagos society, politicians, business leaders, oil executives, and socialites, all celebrating what they believed was Emeka's fresh start. The hotel manager approached me nervously. Madam, I'm sorry, but I have instructions not to allow. Instructions from whom? I handed him a different document. This is a court order granting me full access to this venue as part of an ongoing criminal investigation. Are you planning to obstruct a federal court order? His face paled as he read the official seal. No, madam. Of course not. Please, go ahead. As I approached the ballroom doors, I could hear Emeka's voice over the microphone, addressing his guests. Thank you all for coming to celebrate this new chapter in my life. Sometimes God removes dead weight from our path to make room for his blessings. The crowd laughed and applauded. It was time to crash this party. What do you think will happen when Adunni walks into that ballroom? Comment your thoughts on the betrayal. Share this with someone who loves drama. The ballroom fell silent as I walked through the doors. 300 of Lagos' most influential people turned to stare at the woman they thought was broken, destitute, and possibly insane. The orchestra stopped mid-song. Waiters froze with champagne glasses halfway to their destinations. Emeka's face went through a spectacular range of emotions: confusion, shock, fear, and finally, poorly concealed panic. Chioma, standing beside him in a flowing maternity dress, looked like she had seen a ghost. Good evening, everyone, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the suddenly quiet room. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Emeka recovered first, grabbing the microphone tighter. Adunni, what are you doing here? You should be resting. Oh, but I am resting, darling. I'm resting easy knowing that justice is finally being served. I walked slowly through the crowd, which parted like the Red Sea before Moses. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe my husband has been telling you some interesting stories about me tonight. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I recognized faces everywhere. Chief Williams from the oil industry, Senator Adebayo, several banking executives, socialites whose parties I had attended during happier times. They all looked fascinated and terrified in equal measure. Emeka, I continued, now standing just a few feet from the head table, would you mind sharing with our guests what you told them about my mental state? About my financial situation? About why our marriage ended? His grip on the microphone was so tight his knuckles had gone white. Adunni, please, this isn't the place. Oh, but it's the perfect place. You see, everyone here believed your story about poor, crazy Adunni who couldn't handle being a proper wife. They felt sorry for you, trapped with such an unstable woman. I smiled at Chioma, who was clutching Emeka's arm like a lifeline. Hello, Chioma. Congratulations on your pregnancy. I hope you know what you've gotten yourself into. Chief Williams stepped forward. He had been a friend of my family for decades, though he clearly hadn't recognized me from Emeka's descriptions. Adunni Okafor? My God, child, is that really you? We heard you were unwell. I was unwell, Chief Williams. I was suffering from a severe case of misplaced trust. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the venue's sound system. But I'm feeling much better now. In fact, I thought you might all enjoy seeing how my recovery began. The video started playing on the large screens around the ballroom. The same video of Emeka celebrating his freedom and calling me dead weight. Gasps filled the room as Lagos elite watched one of their own publicly humiliate his hospitalized wife. "Turn it off," Emeka hissed, but the video continued. The next clip showed him withdrawing money from our joint accounts while I was in intensive care, followed by receipts for Chioma's engagement ring, purchased 3 days after my accident. "You see," I addressed the crowd as the damning evidence played, "my husband didn't just abandon me in a hospital bed. He stole from me to finance his new romance. He lied to our community about my condition. And he convinced a young woman to marry him under completely false pretenses." Chioma's face had gone pale. "Emeka, what is she talking about? You said she was mentally ill, that she had no money." "She is." Emeka's voice cracked. "Adunni, stop this madness." "Madness." I laughed, and the sound echoed through the silent ballroom. "The only madness here is thinking you could steal from an Okafor and get away with it." I gestured to Kemi, who entered the ballroom with 3 men in dark suits. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet Agent Adebola from the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. They have some questions for my husband about financial fraud and theft." The EFCC agents moved toward Emeka with the practiced efficiency of law enforcement. The crowd pressed back, creating a circle around the drama unfolding at the head table. "Mr. Emeka Okafor," Agent Adebola said formally, "you are under arrest for suspected financial fraud, theft, and embezzlement. You have the right to remain silent." "This is impossible," Emeka shouted, looking wildly around the room for support. "She has nothing. She's nobody. Her little computer company is worth nothing." "You're right about DataStream Solutions," I said calmly as the handcuffs clicked around his wrists. "It's worth about $2 million. A nice little business, but certainly nothing compared to the Okafor Family Trust Fund." The room erupted in shocked whispers. Several guests were recording everything on their phones. This would be the scandal of the year in Lagos social circles. Trust fund. Chief Williams stepped closer, his business instincts clearly engaged. "Adunni, what trust fund?" "The one my grandfather established 25 years ago. $827 million, to be exact." I watched the number land like a physical blow across the faces in the room. "I gained access to it yesterday, thanks to my husband's betrayal providing legal grounds for early release of funds." Chioma suddenly doubled over, her hands clutching her stomach. "The baby," she gasped. "Something's wrong with the baby." The Oriental Hotel's ballroom erupted into chaos. Chioma collapsed to her knees, her maternity dress spreading around her like a pool of silk as she cried out in pain. Several women rushed to help her while others pulled out their phones to call for medical assistance. "Get her to the hospital now." Dr. Adeyemi, a prominent Lagos physician who happened to be among the guests, took charge immediately. "Someone call an ambulance." Emeka, still in handcuffs, struggled against the EFCC agents. "Let me go. That's my wife. That's my child." "Actually," I said, pulling out another document from my purse, "she's not legally your wife. Your marriage to me was never officially dissolved. Under Nigerian law, your ceremony with Chioma was bigamy, a criminal offense." The room fell silent again except for Chioma's labored breathing as hotel staff brought a wheelchair. Agent Adebola looked at his colleagues and nodded grimly. "That's another charge we'll be adding to the list." As paramedics arrived and carefully moved Chioma to a stretcher, she grabbed my hand with surprising strength. "Please," she whispered, tears streaming down her young face. "I didn't know. He told me you were divorced. He said you were sick in the head and had no money. He said you signed papers." Looking down at this girl, she couldn't be more than 24. I felt the first crack in the ice-cold armor I had built around my heart. She was a victim too, just a different kind. I know you didn't know, I said softly. But you need to focus on your baby right now. As the medical team wheeled her away, Emeka's voice rose above the murmur of the crowd. This is all your fault, Adunni. You and your obsession with revenge. If something happens to that baby, it's on you. The accusation hit me like a slap, and for a moment, doubt crept into my mind. Had I gone too far? Was I responsible for putting stress on a pregnant woman? Chief Williams stepped forward, his weathered face stern. Emeka, you are speaking to one of the most powerful women in West Africa. You would be wise to choose your words more carefully. Most powerful. Senator Adebayo moved closer, his political instincts clearly engaged. Adunni, is it true what you said about your assets? I straightened my shoulders and addressed the room full of Lagos elite. People who, just an hour ago, had been laughing at jokes about my supposed mental illness and poverty. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to reintroduce myself. I am Adunni Okafor, granddaughter of Chief Emeka Okafor Sr., who built his fortune in oil exploration in the 1960s. I am now the controlling shareholder in Okafor Petroleum, West African Banking Corporation, and Nigtel Communications. My personal net worth, as of yesterday morning, stands at $827 million. The numbers hung in the air like incense. I could practically hear the mental calculations happening around the room. Political favors that could be curried, business deals that could be struck, social connections that needed to be rebuilt. But more importantly, I continued, I am a woman who was betrayed by her husband while fighting for her life in a hospital bed. A woman whose trust and resources were stolen to finance another woman's fairy tale. A woman who was publicly humiliated and lied about by the man who vowed to love and protect her. My phone buzzed with an urgent message from Kemi. Hospital called. Chioma is in premature labor. Touch and go. The news hit me like a punch to the gut. Whatever Emeka had done to me, that innocent baby didn't deserve to suffer. Agent Adebola, I said, I need to request a humanitarian pause in these proceedings. That young woman is in premature labor, and regardless of the circumstances, I need to ensure she and the baby receive the best possible care. The EFCC agent looked surprised. Ma'am, that's very generous of you, considering that her husband stole from me to buy her gifts? Considering that he lied to her about everything? She's a victim here too, Agent. And that baby is innocent. Emeka stared at me in shock. You're going to help her? After everything? I'm going to help an innocent child and a young woman who was deceived by a man she trusted. The same thing that happened to me. I turned to address the room one final time. Ladies and gentlemen, this evening has been educational. I trust you all understand now that the stories you heard about me were somewhat exaggerated. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Chief Williams stepped forward. Adunni, your grandfather would be proud of how you've handled this situation. Perhaps we could discuss some business opportunities. Chief Williams, with respect, tonight is not about business. It's about justice, truth, and the protection of innocence. I gathered my purse and prepared to leave. But you're right about one thing. My grandfather would be proud. He always said that real power isn't about crushing your enemies. It's about having the strength to show mercy when you're holding all the cards. As I walked toward the exit, I heard Emeka call out desperately, Adunni, please. I'm sorry. I'll do anything. I paused at the doorway and looked back at the man who had shared my bed for 7 years, who had promised to love me in sickness and health, who had abandoned me when I needed him most. The time for apologies was 3 months ago, when I was lying unconscious in intensive care. The time for apologies was when you were stealing from our joint accounts. The time for apologies was before you married another woman while I was fighting for my life. My phone rang. It was the hospital calling about Chioma's condition. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. The private wing of Lagos University Teaching Hospital felt different when you could afford the presidential suite. As I sat in the plush waiting area outside the emergency delivery room, I tried to process the surreal events of the evening. 3 hours ago, I had been confronting my cheating husband at his Thanksgiving party. Now I was waiting to hear if his pregnant mistress and unborn child would survive the night. Dr. Adebayo emerged from the delivery room, still in surgical scrubs, her face exhausted but relieved. The baby is stable. Premature at 32 weeks, but strong. A little girl. She'll need to stay in the NICU for several weeks, but her chances are good. And Chioma? Physically, she'll recover. Emotionally, that's harder to predict. The stress of this evening triggered the early labor, but she also learned some very difficult truths about her marriage tonight. Through the glass partition, I could see Chioma lying in the hospital bed, pale and fragile, staring at the ceiling. She looked so young, so lost. It reminded me of myself 3 months ago, abandoned and alone in a similar room. Doctor, I want to ensure she receives the best possible care. Private room, specialist consultations, whatever the baby needs. Spare no expense. Dr. Adebayo looked surprised. Mrs. Okafor, given the circumstances, that's very generous of you. That young woman was deceived by my husband just as much as I was. She doesn't deserve to suffer for his lies. My phone rang, Barrister Johnson calling with updates. Adunni, I have news. Emeka has been released on bail, but his assets remain frozen pending investigation. He's also facing charges of bigamy now, which carries a 7-year prison sentence. His political career is effectively over. The party has already distanced themselves from the scandal. What about the money he stole? We've recovered most of it. The car he bought for Chioma, the jewelry, the wedding expenses, all purchased with funds illegally taken from your accounts. It totals nearly 2 million naira. I thought about Chioma lying in that hospital bed, about her baby fighting for life in an incubator. Barrister, I want you to set up a trust fund for the child. 200 million naira. And I want Chioma to have access to educational funds if she wants to complete her studies or start a career. There was silence on the other end of the line. Adunni, are you certain? This is the woman your husband left you for. This is a 24-year-old girl who was lied to and manipulated by a man twice her age. She's not my enemy. She's another one of his victims. A knock at the waiting room door interrupted us. Emeka stood there, looking haggard and defeated, no longer in handcuffs but clearly shaken by the evening's events. Adunni, they said you were here. I wanted to thank you for helping with the medical bills. I studied the man I had once loved, searching for any trace of the person I had married 7 years ago. All I saw was a stranger who had made catastrophic choices. How is she? Scared. Confused. She keeps asking me why I lied to her about everything. He sat down heavily in the chair across from me. She doesn't understand why you would help her after what we did to you. Do you understand why? He was quiet for a long moment. Because you're a better person than I am. Because you always were. No, Emeka. I'm helping her because I know what it feels like to be betrayed by someone you trust. I know what it feels like to be abandoned when you're vulnerable. I wouldn't wish that on anyone, even the woman you chose over me. Through the glass, I could see Chioma had started crying. A nurse was speaking to her gently, probably explaining about the baby's condition. Adunni, I know I have no right to ask this, but is there any way we can work this out? Any chance you could forgive me? The question hung in the air between us like smoke. For a moment, I remembered the good times, our wedding day, lazy Sunday mornings, the way he used to make me laugh. But then I remembered the photos scattered on my hospital bed, his voice in that video calling me dead weight, the 3 months I spent alone and afraid while he planned his new life. Emeka, you didn't just cheat on me. You stole from me. You lied about me to our entire community. You married another woman while I was unconscious in intensive care. You celebrated my supposed mental illness at a party with 300 witnesses. I stood up slowly, my ribs still aching from the accident. There are some things that forgiveness can't fix. A new voice interrupted us. Excuse me, are you Mrs. Adunni Okafor? I turned to see a young man in an expensive suit, carrying a leather briefcase and looking somewhat nervous. I am. And you are. Barrister Chukwu from CNN Law Associates. We represent Miss Chioma Nwosu. She's asked me to speak with you about a very delicate matter. Barrister Chukwu set his briefcase on the waiting room table with the precision of a man who had practiced this moment. His client, Chioma, wanted to see me. But first, he needed to discuss some complications that had emerged from the evening's revelations. Mrs. Okafor, my client has asked me to inform you that she intends to file for annulment of her marriage to Mr. Emeka Okafor on the grounds that he was already married when their ceremony took place. Emeka's face went white. She can't do that. We love each other. The baby, Barrister Chukwu continued calmly, will be considered legally illegitimate unless paternity is established through proper channels. Miss Nwosu is also requesting a restraining order against Mr. Okafor for fraud and emotional manipulation. I felt a grudging respect for young Chioma. She was hurt and scared, but she wasn't going to remain a victim. Furthermore, the lawyer continued, Miss Nwosu wishes to return all gifts purchased with stolen funds to their rightful owner. The car, jewelry, wedding expenses. She wants no part of anything bought with money taken from you, Mrs. Okafor. This was not what I had expected. I had assumed Chioma would try to salvage what she could from the wreckage of her marriage, but instead she was choosing dignity over material gain. I'd like to speak with her, I said. She's hoping you would say that. We walked to Chioma's private room, where she lay propped up against pillows, looking tiny and fragile in the large hospital bed. Her eyes were red from crying, but her voice was steady when she spoke. Mrs. Okafor, I owe you an apology. You owe me nothing, child. We were both deceived by the same man. But I should have questioned more. When he said you were mentally ill, when he said you had no family money, when he rushed me into marriage after only 4 months of dating. She wiped her eyes with a tissue. I was so flattered that an older, successful man wanted me. I ignored all the warning signs. I sat down beside her bed, seeing myself at 24, naive, trusting, believing that love could conquer any obstacle. Chioma, how much do you know about your baby's father? I thought I knew everything. He told me he was a successful businessman, that he owned several companies, that he was going to run for governor next year. She laughed bitterly. I found out tonight that everything he owned came from your money, your connections, your family's influence. The truth was even worse than I had suspected. Emeka hadn't just stolen my money. He had built his entire identity around my resources, then discarded me when he thought he could find a younger, more malleable wife to control. Chioma, what do you want to do now? You have a daughter to think about. That's why I wanted to speak with you. My lawyer says that legally, since Emeka was still married to you when I gave birth, my daughter has no claim to his name or inheritance. But... She hesitated, looking embarrassed. I come from a very poor family in Enugu. My parents are farmers. I was working as a secretary when I met Emeka. I don't have resources to raise a child alone, especially one who might have medical complications from being premature. I could see where this conversation was heading, and I felt a strange mixture of admiration and pity for this young woman who was trying to navigate an impossible situation with grace. What are you asking me, Chioma? I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for a chance to earn my way. I have a degree in business administration, and I'm good with numbers. If you have any companies that need someone trustworthy, someone who understands what it's like to be betrayed by Emeka Okafor. Before I could respond, there was a commotion in the hallway. Through the open door, I could see Emeka arguing loudly with hospital security. That's my daughter in there. That's my wife. You can't keep me from seeing them. Sir, we have a court order, one of the guards was explaining patiently. Miss Nwosu has filed for a restraining order, and you're not allowed within 50 meters of her or the baby. Chioma's face hardened. I filed the papers an hour ago. I won't let him manipulate me anymore, and I won't let him use my daughter as a pawn in whatever game he's playing. The strength in her voice surprised me. This wasn't the same frightened girl who had collapsed at the party. Motherhood and betrayal had forged something steel-hard in her spirit. Chioma, I said slowly, I'm going to make you an offer, but I want you to understand that it comes with conditions. She nodded eagerly. I'll give you a position as financial controller for my charitable foundation. The salary is 500,000 naira per month to start. I'll also ensure your daughter has the best medical care and educational opportunities available. But in exchange, I need something from you. Anything. I need you to testify against Emeka in court. Everything he told you about me, about his finances, about his plans. All of it. I want him held accountable not just for stealing from me, but for the emotional manipulation he put both of us through. Chioma's eyes flashed with an emotion I recognized. The cold fire of justified revenge. Mrs. Okafor, I'll testify against him with pleasure. But I have one condition of my own. What's that? When this is all over, when he's in prison and our lives have moved on, I want you to teach me how to be the kind of woman who never gets taken advantage of again. I want to learn how to build real power, not just rely on some man's false promises. I smiled for the first time since this nightmare began. I think we can arrange that. From the hallway, Emeka's voice rose in anger. This is all Aduni's fault. She's poisoning everyone against me. She's destroyed my family, my career, everything. But his protests sounded hollow now, the desperate cries of a man who had gambled everything and lost. As I looked at Chioma, young, determined, and absolutely done with being anyone's victim, I realized that Emeka's greatest mistake wasn't stealing from me or abandoning me in the hospital. His greatest mistake was underestimating the power of women who refuse to stay down. My phone buzzed with a message that made my blood run cold. You think you've won, but this isn't over. I know things about your precious grandfather's money that could destroy you. We need to talk. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. The message from Emeka haunted me through a sleepless night in my Ikoyi penthouse. By morning, I had made a decision that would either end this nightmare permanently or destroy everything I had worked to rebuild. Kemi, set up a meeting with Emeka for this afternoon. Neutral location. The restaurant at the 4 Points Hotel in Victoria Island. And make sure our private investigator has cameras recording everything. Madam, are you sure? After everything he's done. He claims to have information about my grandfather's money. I need to know what he thinks he knows. The truth was, my grandfather's fortune had always carried whispers of controversy. Chief Emeka Okafor Sr. had been one of the first Nigerians to strike major oil deals in the 1960s. But there had always been rumors about how he secured those contracts, about political connections that may have crossed ethical lines. I spent the morning with Barrister Johnson, reviewing every document related to the trust fund, looking for any weakness that Emeka might exploit. Aduni, your grandfather's business practices were aggressive but entirely legal for their time, the elderly lawyer assured me. The trust fund was established through proper channels, all taxes have been paid, and there are no outstanding legal challenges. But what if Emeka has found something we missed? What if he has evidence of wrongdoing that could trigger a government investigation? Barrister Johnson's expression grew troubled. There is one thing. Your grandfather left sealed documents that were only to be opened if the trust fund was ever legally challenged. He made me swear never to examine them unless absolutely necessary. A chill ran down my spine. What kind of documents? I don't know. But he said they contained insurance against anyone who might try to destroy what he built for his family. At 3 p.m., I walked into the Four Points restaurant to find Emeka already seated at a corner table, looking haggard but defiant. The man who had once commanded rooms with his charisma now appeared desperate, his expensive suit wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot from stress. "You came," he said as I sat down across from him. "You threatened to destroy me." "Of course I came." I kept my voice level, professional. "What do you think you know about my grandfather's money?" Emeka smiled, but it was ugly and cold. "I know about the Biafran oil deals. I know about the government officials he bribed. I know about the villages that were displaced when he secured those drilling rights." My blood turned to ice. The Biafran War era was a dark chapter in Nigerian history, and any business conducted during that time carried the potential for devastating scandal. "Those are serious accusations, Emeka. Do you have proof?" He pulled out a manila folder and set it on the table between us. Documents. Photographs. Bank records showing payments to military officials. Your precious grandfather wasn't the noble businessman everyone thinks he was. I reached for the folder, but he pulled it back. "Not so fast. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to drop all charges against me. You're going to allow my marriage to Chioma to stand. You're going to give me 50 million naira to start over, and you're going to publicly apologize for the misunderstanding at the Oriental Hotel. And if I refuse, I release these documents to every major newspaper in Nigeria. Your grandfather becomes known as a war profiteer who built his fortune on the suffering of displaced families. The government launches an investigation into the trust fund. Your assets get frozen while they determine if the money should be returned to affected communities." The threat was carefully crafted. Even if the documents were eventually proven false or exaggerated, the scandal alone would destroy my reputation and potentially tie up my assets for years. "You're bluffing," I said, though my heart was pounding. "Am I?" "Check your phone." A message appeared from an unknown number, a photograph of what appeared to be my grandfather shaking hands with a military official in the 1960s, with a briefcase visible between them. The image quality was grainy, but it looked authentic. "I have dozens of these, Adani. Bank records, correspondence, witness statements from people who worked for your grandfather back then. Enough to bury you and everything you've built." I stared at the man I had once loved, trying to reconcile the Emeka I remembered with this stranger who was attempting to blackmail me with my own family history. "You really think you can extort me?" "I think I'm giving you a choice. Protect your grandfather's reputation and your fortune, or watch both crumble because of your need for revenge." My phone rang. It was Barrister Johnson calling urgently. "Adani, you need to get back to my office immediately. I've opened your grandfather's sealed documents. You're not going to believe what I found." Emeka leaned back in his chair, smug and confident. "Sounds like you have some reading to do. I'll give you 24 hours to decide. After that, the newspapers get very interesting stories about the Okafor family fortune." As I stood to leave, he grabbed my wrist. "Adani, it doesn't have to be like this. We could work together, rebuild our marriage, raise Chioma's daughter as our own. You have the money, I have the connections. We could rule Lagos society together." I looked down at his hand on my wrist, then back at his face. "Emeka, you abandoned me in a hospital bed, stole my money, lied about my mental health to our entire community, and married another woman while I was fighting for my life. And now you think I'd want to rule Lagos society with you? People forgive. People forget. With enough money, any scandal can be buried. I pulled my wrist free and gathered my purse. You're about to learn that some things can't be bought, Emeka. And some women refuse to be broken. But as I walked away, one question burned in my mind. What exactly had my grandfather done to accumulate his fortune? And was I about to lose everything because of secrets buried 50 years ago? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. Barrister Johnson's office felt like a tomb as I stared at the contents of my grandfather's sealed documents spread across his mahogany desk. The truth was far more complex than Emeka's crude blackmail attempt had suggested. Your grandfather was no saint, Barrister Johnson said quietly, but he wasn't the villain Emeka is trying to paint either. The documents revealed a man caught in impossible circumstances during one of Nigeria's most turbulent periods. Yes, Chief Okafor had made payments to military officials during the Biafran War, but the money had gone toward establishing refugee camps and providing medical supplies to displaced families, not securing illegal oil deals. Look at this, I said, pointing to a faded carbon copy of a letter dated 1969. He was coordinating with international relief organizations to help war victims. These weren't bribes. They were humanitarian aid payments. Exactly. And here. Barrister Johnson pulled out a thick folder of bank records. Every oil contract your grandfather signed was legitimate, approved by proper authorities, and included provisions for community development. He built schools, hospitals, and roads in every area where he established drilling operations. The photographs that Emeka had shown me suddenly made sense. My grandfather hadn't been handing briefcases of bribe money to military officials. He had been delivering humanitarian supplies during a civil war. But how did Emeka get these documents? And why would he think they were evidence of wrongdoing? Because someone gave him incomplete information, probably hoping he would jump to the wrong conclusions. Barrister Johnson pulled out one final document, a letter addressed to me, dated just weeks before my grandfather's death 15 years ago. My dear Adunni, if you are reading this, then someone has challenged our family's honor with partial truths and deliberate misinterpretations. I have always known this day might come. Men who build honest fortunes during dishonest times are often accused of corruption by those who lack the courage to stand for what is right. The sealed documents in this folder contain the complete truth about how our wealth was accumulated. Show them to your enemies with pride. We have nothing to hide and everything to celebrate. Remember, real power comes not from money, but from the certainty that your hands are clean and your conscience is clear. Your loving grandfather, Chief Emeka Okafor Sr. I felt tears prick my eyes as I read the letter. Even from beyond the grave, my grandfather was protecting me, giving me the weapons I needed to fight back against false accusations. Barrister Johnson, I need you to prepare a comprehensive response to Emeka's claims. Every document, every receipt, every piece of evidence that proves my grandfather's innocence. And I need it ready for a press conference tomorrow morning. A press conference? Adunni, are you sure you want to make this public? Emeka is counting on me being afraid of scandal, afraid of having my family name dragged through the mud. He doesn't understand that the truth is more powerful than his lies. My phone rang. It was Chioma calling from the hospital. Mrs. Okafor? I'm sorry to bother you, but Emeka was just here. He tried to take the baby from the NICU. Security stopped him. But he was ranting about having evidence that could destroy you, that he was going to be rich and powerful again. Chioma, are you and the baby safe? Yes, but I'm scared. He looked desperate, almost crazy. What evidence is he talking about? I made a decision that would either vindicate my family forever or expose me to public humiliation. Chioma, I want you to attend a press conference tomorrow morning. I'm going to tell the complete truth about everything. My grandfather's business, Emeka's blackmail attempt, the real story behind our family's wealth. Are you willing to stand with me? There was a pause. Mrs. Okafor, after everything you've done for me and my daughter. Yes, I'll stand with you. That evening, I called every major news outlet in Lagos. This Day, The Guardian, Channels TV, even international outlets like BBC Africa and CNN. By morning, the ballroom of the Four Points Hotel was packed with reporters, cameras, and curious members of Lagos society. I stood at the podium in a simple but elegant business suit, flanked by Chioma holding her newborn daughter, Barrister Johnson with his files of evidence, and Agent Adebola from the EFCC. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice carrying clearly across the packed room. Yesterday, my estranged husband attempted to blackmail me using falsified evidence about my grandfather's business practices during the Biafran War era. Today, I'm here to set the record straight. I saw Emeka in the back of the room, his face pale as he realized what was happening. Mr. Emeka Okafor claimed that my family's wealth was built on corruption and exploitation. The truth is exactly the opposite. I nodded to my assistant, and the large screens around the room lit up with images from my grandfather's documents. Photographs of the schools and hospitals he built, receipts for medical supplies delivered to refugee camps, testimonials from community leaders praising his humanitarian efforts during Nigeria's darkest period. My grandfather, Chief Emeka Okafor Sr., used his oil fortune to save lives, not exploit suffering. He built infrastructure, provided education, and helped heal a nation torn apart by civil war. The room erupted in murmurs as reporters scribbled notes and cameras flashed. Furthermore, I continued, the man who attempted this blackmail has been charged with financial fraud, theft, bigamy, and now extortion. He stole from me while I was hospitalized, lied to our community about my mental health, and attempted to build a new life using money stolen from the woman he abandoned. Chioma stepped forward to the microphone. I was deceived by this man into believing his lies about Mrs. Okafor. I've seen the evidence of his crimes, and I'm here today to publicly apologize to the Okafor family for being used as a weapon in his campaign of deception. The cameras focused on her as she spoke with quiet dignity about being manipulated, about choosing to stand with truth rather than the man who had fathered her child. Agent Adebola then approached the microphone. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has completed its investigation into Mr. Emeka Okafor's activities. We have sufficient evidence to prosecute him for multiple felonies, including fraud, theft, and attempted extortion. As the press conference concluded, I saw Emeka pushing through the crowd, his face desperate. "This isn't over, Adunni," he shouted. "You think you've won, but I still have cards to play." But his words sounded hollow now, the threats of a man who had lost everything and refused to accept defeat. What I didn't know was that Emeka's desperation would drive him to one final, devastating act of revenge that would put both Chioma and her baby in mortal danger. 3 days after the press conference that cleared my grandfather's name and exposed Emeka's extortion attempt, I thought the nightmare was finally over. The EFCC had formally charged him with multiple felonies, his political career was destroyed, and Lagos society had embraced me as a victim who had fought back with dignity and truth. I was wrong. At 2 a.m. on a rainy Thursday morning, my phone rang with the call that shattered my newfound peace. "Mrs. Okafor?" The voice was panicked, breathless. "This is Dr. Adebayo at the hospital. Chioma and the baby are missing." I sat up in bed, instantly alert. "Missing? What do you mean missing?" "Someone disabled the security cameras and took them from the NICU around midnight. We found an unconscious nurse and signs of a struggle. The police are here, but..." I was already reaching for my clothes. "I'm on my way." The drive through empty Lagos streets felt like a descent into hell. Rain pounded my windshield as Ibrahim navigated around flooded sections of road, my mind racing with possibilities, each one worse than the last. At the hospital, I found chaos. Police officers interviewing staff, Agent Adebola coordinating with hospital security, and Dr. Adebayo looking haggard and guilty. How could this happen? I demanded. There were security guards, cameras, a locked ward. The person who took them knew the hospital layout perfectly, Agent Adebola explained grimly. They used a service elevator that bypasses the main security checkpoints. Someone with inside knowledge planned this. Emeka, I whispered. He must have. Mrs. Okafor. A young police officer approached with a manila envelope. This was left at the nurse's station. It's addressed to you. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper with a message written in Emeka's distinctive handwriting. You destroyed my life, so I'm taking theirs. If you want to see Chioma and my daughter alive, come alone to the old Okafor compound in Surulere at sunrise. Bring 50 million naira in cash. No police, no lawyers, no rescue attempts. Just you, the money, and a chance to save 2 innocent lives. The room spun around me as the implications sank in. Emeka had kidnapped a recovering mother and her premature baby, his own child, in a desperate final gambit for revenge and money. We need to call in the tactical team, Agent Adebola said, reading the note over my shoulder. This is now a kidnapping case with federal implications. No, I said quietly. He said no police. If he sees any sign of law enforcement, he might. I couldn't finish the sentence. Mrs. Okafor, we cannot allow you to meet with a desperate criminal alone. The man has clearly lost all rationality. But I was already thinking, planning, remembering something my grandfather had once told me about the old family compound in Surulere. Built in the 1950s, it had been abandoned for years, but it held secrets that Emeka knew nothing about. Agent Adebola, I need you to trust me. Give me 6 hours. If I'm not back by noon with Chioma and the baby, then you can send in every tactical team in Lagos State. This is madness. This is justice, I interrupted. Emeka thinks he holds all the cards because he has hostages, but he chose the wrong location for his final stand. At 5 a.m., I drove through the gates of the old Okafor compound carrying a briefcase that Emeka would assume contained 50 million naira. It actually held something far more valuable. Documents that would end this nightmare permanently. The compound was a sprawling collection of traditional Nigerian architecture, now overgrown with vegetation and shadows. I could see a light in the main house and the silhouette of a figure pacing behind the windows. As I approached the front door, it swung open to reveal Emeka holding Chioma's baby in his arms. The infant looked so tiny and fragile, and my heart clenched with fear for her safety. You came, he said, his voice hollow with exhaustion. I wasn't sure you would risk your own life for my child. Where's Chioma? Inside. Resting. The journey was difficult for her. She's still recovering from childbirth. He gestured with the hand not supporting the baby. Do you have the money? I held up the briefcase. Everything you asked for. But first, I want to see that they're both alive and unharmed. He led me into the main room where Chioma sat tied to a chair, pale but conscious. Her eyes filled with tears when she saw me. I'm sorry, she whispered. He said he would kill the baby if I didn't come with him quietly. It's going to be okay, I assured her, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. Emeka set the baby gently in a makeshift crib. Even in his desperation, he was careful with his daughter. That gave me hope that some vestige of humanity remained in him. The money, a dunny. Put it on the table and stepped back. I placed the briefcase on the wooden table that had once hosted family gatherings during happier times. Emeka, this doesn't have to end badly. Take the money and leave the country. Start over somewhere else. But let Chioma and the baby go. He laughed bitterly as he opened the briefcase. Then his face went white with rage. Instead of cash, he found legal documents and photographs. What is this? Evidence that you kidnapped a woman and child. Evidence that you've committed multiple felonies. Evidence that will put you in prison for the rest of your life. I kept my voice calm, steady. But also evidence of something else. I pulled out one particular document and handed it to him. This is your daughter's birth certificate. Notice anything interesting about the date? He scanned the document, his face growing confused. She was born at 32 weeks, which means she was conceived 5 months ago, Emeka. 3 weeks before my car accident. 3 weeks before you claim you started your relationship with Chioma because I was mentally unstable. The truth hit him like a physical blow. His affair with Chioma had started long before my accident, long before he had any excuse about my mental health or our marriage problems. You were planning to leave me even before I was hospitalized, I continued. The accident just gave you a convenient excuse to abandon your responsibilities. Chioma stared at him with dawning horror. You told me you only met me after your wife became ill. You said our love was pure, that it wasn't adultery because your marriage was already over in your heart. Emeka's hands shook as the weight of his lies crashed down on him. I was going to tell you the truth eventually. When? I demanded. After you collected 50 million naira from me? After you fled the country with money stolen from your wife and child? The sound of approaching sirens filled the air. Through the window, I could see police vehicles surrounding the compound. You called them, Emeka said, his voice dead. No. But I told Agent Adebola that if he didn't hear from me by sunrise, he should assume the worst. I checked my watch. It's 6:15 a.m. The sun rose 15 minutes ago. As tactical officers poured through the doors, Emeka looked at his daughter sleeping peacefully in her makeshift crib, then at Chioma tied to the chair, then at me standing in the ruins of our shared past. I loved you once, he said quietly as the handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Before the money, before the politics, before everything went wrong. I really did love you. I know, I replied, surprised by the sadness in my own voice. That's what makes this so tragic. 6 months later, I stood in a Lagos courtroom as Judge Adebola sentenced Emeka to 22 years in federal prison for kidnapping, fraud, theft, bigamy, and attempted extortion. Chioma sat beside me, her daughter healthy and thriving in her arms. The court finds, Judge Adebola declared, that Mr. Emeka Okafor showed a pattern of domestic betrayal, financial manipulation, and emotional abuse that culminated in the kidnapping of his own child. This sentence reflects not only the severity of his crimes but the court's commitment to protecting victims of domestic violence and financial abuse. As we left the courthouse, reporters shouted questions about my plans for the future. I had become something of a symbol in Lagos, the woman who refused to be broken by betrayal, who fought back with truth instead of vengeance. Mrs. Okafor, one journalist called out, "What's next for you and your fortune?" I looked at Chioma, who had become my business partner and closest friend, and at her daughter, who had somehow become the child I never had with Emeka. What's next, I said, is building something better than what came before. My grandfather used his wealth to heal a nation during wartime. I intend to use mine to empower women who refuse to remain victims of domestic betrayal and emotional manipulation. That evening, as I watched Chioma feed her daughter in the nursery I had built in my Ikoyi home, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought us here. Emeka's betrayal had nearly destroyed me, but it had also revealed strength I never knew I possessed and forged an unlikely family from the ashes of his deception. The trust fund that I had never known existed had given me the power to seek justice. But the real victory wasn't the money or the legal triumph. It was the knowledge that I had faced the worst kind of betrayal and emerged stronger, kinder, and more determined to protect other women from the same fate. Sometimes the greatest revenge is simply refusing to let someone else's cruelty make you cruel in return. As for Emeka, he would spend the next 2 decades in prison, thinking about the $800 million fortune he had tried to steal and the family he had destroyed through his own greed and faithlessness. The woman he had abandoned in a hospital bed had become one of the most powerful people in West Africa, while he had lost everything: his freedom, his reputation, his daughter, and the love of 2 women who had once believed in him. In the end, that seemed like justice enough. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who loves tales of justice and resilience. Comment below. What would you have done in a Dunny's situation? Your support means everything. Hit that notification bell for more gripping stories like this.